Hello and welcome to UnCaged. It's your main man, Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone's having a good Yuletide season.
Hi everybody, Matt Guy here. Hope everybody's keeping well and is full of Christmas cheer and festivities.
And Yule log and sausage rolls. Hello everyone, it's Stu.
So we just thought we'd do a quick bonus podcast during the, what I like to call the perineum of the year, the bit between Christmas and New Year. Just something to keep you tiding over. Matt wanted us to discuss a film which I had tricked myself into thinking I'd already seen, but I actually hadn't. And we're here to discuss Falling Down. Matt, take the lead. Tell us why you wanted us to sit through this film.
I think it was one of these films where actually I explained it to people. It's one of those classics. Have you seen Falling Down? No, never heard of it. And I couldn't believe that the majority of my friends, people that listen to this podcast, they've never heard of Falling Down, and it's recently come onto Netflix. So I just really wanted to mull it over with you guys and actually give it the uncaged treatment, and we dissect it a little bit and talk about it from a semi take the piss view and kind of just like dig into it really and mull it over. I mean, on its very, very essence, it's a vigilante film, but it's actually so much more. It's about a man who's simply just absolutely had enough of the society he lives in and goes at its most basic form on a rampage. It escalates kind of throughout one day. But there's so much more to it, and I think it's going to be interesting to talk it through, really. Did you guys watch a trailer or anything beforehand, or did you go in blind?
I went in completely with no idea at all what it was even about. As per usual with things like this. I mean, when you mentioned the title, the first thing that comes to mind was Rising Damp, and I thought, is this a spin-off of Rising Damp? Obviously, it's not. And I had literally never heard of it before, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And when you said it was, when you said, "Oh, Falling Down's on Netflix now," and we both said, "What?" At the same, me and Andy said at the same time, because just one of them blank spots completely for me.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, to be fair to them, the quality of the transfer onto Netflix is absolutely incredible. It's like it's proper. It could have been filmed today. How good the actual quality of the image is. It's superb, and that's not just me watching it on super screen and all the usual stuff. But yeah, I went in with a completely open mind, having no clue what it was, even what genre it was even off. But I thoroughly enjoyed myself. It was great.
Did you know about it, Andy, going into it?
So I remember it being on the trailers, on the trailers for videos back in the 90s that you'd get from your local rental store. So I kind of knew it was about a man who lost his rag and took it out on the world. That was pretty much all I knew. I vaguely remember the trailer being set in the car, which only turns out to be a tiny portion of the film. But I remember a lot about that scene in particular. That was what the trailer was played on, from what I remember. The fly irritating him, stuck in a hot car. And that's really all that stuck with me. Everything else that happens after, that was all pretty much new to me. But it's become such... See, now, Stu had never heard of it, but I know this film because I feel that it's become part of the society's conscious, almost.
Yeah.
You hear people saying that they've had that falling down moment where
the
world's just got on top of them, and that's it. They're on the edge. They're about to go postal, if you will. So it's almost like if you've not seen Spinal Tap, you know what turning it up to 11 means.
Yes, yeah,
it's that sort of thing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because films of that era, so like 93, they have a real horrible tendency, and I'll have to go back and check if Falling Down has this in the trailer, where even if a film has like a proper serious tone to it, they'll really turn me off by having a heavy amount of narration in a trailer. And it'll usually be like 20th Century Fox presents Falling Down, a man at the end of his tether. That kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas actually...
The inner world thing at the beginning.
Yeah, like less is more in these scenarios. One thing that like I immediately get from this is Michael Douglas looks like absolute shit throughout the whole thing. And I when I think of Michael Douglas, I think it's quite a suave character, well-spoken, and you'd never like say if this was the only like film you'd ever seen him in, you'd never think he could play those characters because he plays this kind of real straight laced, not stuck up, but um, kind of by the book American citizen really well. Um, and there's moments in it and with his dialogue when he's like, well, I suppose we'll get onto this, but when he's talking, he makes a really compelling argument for the things that he does, even in his most extreme. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I mean, like for anyone that hasn't watched it, he escalates in an almost Grand Theft Auto style way of advancing through weaponry. Like first he starts,
Yeah, exactly.
First he does. So like first he starts with a baseball bat, then like a pen knife, pocket knife kind of thing, or what do they call it? A switchblade? Is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Up to like an Uzi and handguns, ends up with the fucking bazooka. So it's like, do you know what I mean? And I don't know about how you guys felt, but I thought actually the pacing of the film was really good. It never felt rushed, but it never dragged on for me. I don't know how it felt for you.
No.
I think that's a spot on analogy for it. Actually, the pacing was perfect because it escalates and it does speed up as it goes along, but it never runs ahead of itself and it never drags behind. It's really well paced.
And you had the stuff with the. I mean, I for the first 5 minutes I thought, oh, this is interesting. If it is going to be, well, obviously having no clue. If it was just going to be about the people in the cars, so you had the and. You could how it was shot was. I mean, it was incredible. How you felt tense being that close in on people as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It was zoomed in on his face, and you could see the sweat beads and stuff. And then you went to the school bus that looked like one of them cattle trucks with the sheep hanging out the side that you see on the motorways, but just with kids. And then you had the pensioners on the car phone, and I thought, well, this is you can imagine how stressful this is going to be automatically. But then,
and
because it was, I mean, we haven't even mentioned it yet. The other story about the cop, how you had you had the escalation of him, kind of, and then it cut to the cop's life, and then he came back and he was doing something even more crazy, and that worked perfectly.
And how often, have we said that? Like, I think we spoke about when we spoke about Last Christmas, like ironically, like not comparing the two of these, but like we've got two story arcs that are given equally enough time and depth. And I think so. What was interesting about this film for me, when I studied this at university, it was heavy when I was really into looking at masculinity in film or the lack thereof in Robert Duvall's character's case. And I think it was just really interesting, like his character arc compared to then William or for the sake of it, Douglas's character, just about how like men in this film are represented. Like, first of all, everyone's really fucking rude to each other, for one. But just this the way that men are presented in this film is so it's so relevant even now. I really think in that what is considered like masculine and macho really doesn't matter. Like what are considered like the most manly people in this film are absolute scumbags for the majority of them.
Yeah, they're the worst.
They're the worst of people. I don't know. It's the like it's kind of like the more Robert Duvall's character becomes himself and becomes more of a man, the more he loses his niceness and what probably makes him quite a sweet character, just to become more like it is Heston, isn't it? It is Heston, yeah. More like Heston, who is a dick, basically. But yeah, so one of the things I wanted to ask you guys how you felt about it was he's a vigilante. We've seen loads of vigilante films in the past, anti-heroes and the like. Does anything that he does anything that happens in this film that is at his hands not justified? Because as far as I'm concerned, nearly everything that he does had a complete justification. So he didn't do anything to anybody that didn't deserve it.
Yeah, well, he ran away from his car because he was pissed off. He almost got stabbed, so he defended himself. He nearly got God knows what the Nazi was going to do to him. So fair play again.
That was a Pulp Fiction moment, that
Yeah.
was, wasn't
Yes,
it?
100%.
The posh twats at the golf club. Again, he didn't do anything directly to them, but they got what they deserved. So yeah, I mean, he's in a kind of twisted way. Then you're right. Obviously,
What I find quite interesting is a few years prior to this film, Michael Douglas was in Wall Street.
Mm.
Greed is good. Everything he's railing against in this film is exactly what Gordon Gekko was trying to get in Wall Street.
Yeah.
The march of progress, the rise of capitalism. So when he is assaulting the Korean shop owner, for example, that's completely, like, that was indefensible.
Mm-hmm.
He's complaining about the fact that things are more expensive now. Unfortunately, that's just the way of the world.
Yeah, yeah.
He was comparing it to like the 1960s prices.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, in 1960s, they would have been complaining about the prices compared to the 40s.
Yeah,
Obviously, with the war, I know it's a bit different, but we're talking about the march of progress. And then there's obviously the issues surrounding the multiculturalism, the problems with the Hispanic people. It was quite racist in parts.
Do you think it was
wasn't
though?
just...
Do you think? Do you think he was a racist? No. That's no. Do you think that, as far as I'm concerned, he was in the way of what many older people are like, in that they're okay with it but grumble underneath, kind of thing? Whereas he doesn't like directly use racial slurs, does he? Or he doesn't directly like call out the Korean guy for the war or anything like that, as far as I'm aware.
Well,
he says go in my country and what we pay for you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The two things. Firstly, he says, "Do you not have the letter V in your language?" Which I don't think in Korea they have a direct translation. But I mean, that's minor. But in 1993, off the back, I believe it was the LA riots, there were problems with the Korean community because I believe there was a Korean bodega owner who didn't defend or sold out a young black girl that was contributed to the riots that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So the Korean community got a lot of shit off the back of that. So the subtext, obviously, with 27 years later, you're not going to know these things. But at that time, there was a racial element in casting someone who would have been of Korean descent.
And what was that?
So there was that story there.
What was that film? I completely forgot it in my head again. Remember the one that I watched a few months ago from the director who made The Five Bloods?
Yeah, I was going to get onto that film in a bit. It's Do the Right Thing, which is
again,
exactly the same as this. Yeah,
in a heat wave, being pissed off, multicultural area. And a lot of it's just, it's not racial, it's just gang warfare. And he's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it reminded me of a bit of a film that I know not many people are going to have seen, called Driller Killer, which is it's a terrible, shitty B movie from years ago, from probably the late 70s, in the kind of a video nasty era, where it's a guy who just loses it and goes around drilling tramps' heads in. But it's a similar kind of thing. He just flips. He's just had enough of his life, and he goes around. And in his world, tramps are the problem. The homeless, and he goes around drilling.
Well, this is the thing. Like, whether you agree with what he does throughout the film or not, at the time, and even as relevant now, I think he's basically an embodiment of like American culture and American tension. Of what is still, quite sadly, 27 years on, still going on in America at the minute. And it's really uncomfortable because you've got somebody that is so adamant that he's right in everything that he's doing and has the unwavering right to do whatever he likes because he's an American, that he is completely it's unfathomable to think that he's doing wrong. And yes, there are a lot of people that are rude to him and everything throughout and do bad by him. But it's for me, it's amazing that 27 years on, it's just as relevant.
I think the telling scene in this whole film is right towards the end when he's face to face with Duval, Prendergast, when he says, "I'm the bad guy."
Yeah.
Because at no point throughout this entire film has he realised that what he's doing is bad. He pulled out a gun for absolutely no reason in the middle of a McDonald's rip-off. And to him, that's perfectly acceptable because he was 3 minutes late for a breakfast. So why can't I have a breakfast?
Yeah, it's just been.
And at no point did he think, actually, this is a bad thing to be doing.
It's just been entitled. I mean, we've all been in places like that where, especially, it happens in Wetherspoons all the time when people turn up at like 2 minutes past 12. They can have a breakfast now. It's not like it's been the same for the last 15 years. That it used to be off 11, now it's 12. But it's the same point. People know the rules, but they'll always push it as far as they possibly can, and it's never anyone's fault but their own.
Yeah, but the world is against them because the world owes them something.
Yeah,
and that's what it felt like with him.
I think with him having that kind of that flat top kind of action man G.I. Joe haircut as well, that never moves. I think it's the embodiment of the kind of the all-American hero that you kind of think of the early 90s for. Yeah. That kind of look about him. I mean, the fact that his tie stays on for the whole film as well.
Well, it's funny because like what I really liked about this film is that it harks back to the mantra of the Joker in that one bad day can set you off. And what I also think actually harks back to really nicely is the latest Joker in that actually is this actually a depiction of an indictment about mental health disorders? Because there's clearly something not right about him, his character, and actually has society failed him, or is he failing society in his actions? And I think there's so many actual things that this film covers that I think you have to watch it a couple of times really to take each point in. So I wrote a list of them down. I mean, victim culture for one, race, xenophobia, white supremacy, consumerism, capitalist critique, emasculation, mental health and disorders, just to name a few that are like touched on as themes in this film. And the one thing that got me on this viewing for me actually was in terms of like victim culture. So when the police are questioning his wife, and then she's filed a restraining order, but there's no physical evidence that he's actually harmed anybody. The way that the police are questioning her. Now, I don't mind saying this, it makes me sound like the villain. At first, I was like, well, she's got no fucking proof. Like, you know what I mean? How can we do this to people? We can't stop people seeing their kids because of this. But then the more you think about it, like, well, actually, why should we have a ticking time bomb until somebody clearly goes postal like he does? But this film does force you to ask these questions to yourself. Were there any kind of themes that you guys had picked up on that actually were uncomfortable because of it?
We saw it later on as well when he's watching the video of himself being just a nasty bastard.
Yeah,
he's like torturing his daughter because I bought that horse. She's gonna be on it. You know, what the fuck are you doing? He's clearly not right, and whether he has got a restraining order against him, and he keeps ringing up and just heavy breathing down the phone and not saying anything to her. You think because there was bits of it like when the drive-by happened and he didn't get touched by any bullets, and I thought, hang on a minute, I ain't gonna get caught out again. Is he a ghost? And after last Christmas, I thought, no. Is this one of them things where, like American Psycho, is it real? Is it in his head, or that he's actually been a bastard to everyone, and he's just a really sad bloke, and he's going to be in his car all the whole time? I mean, this is what I was thinking. I mean, this is what you've done to me. You're getting me questioning things now. But actually, he's just a bit of a lunatic who's on a quest of his own making, and
yeah.
You look at like you did say like about the masculinity things, and you got the other guy in the police station as well who gets twatted into the cake later on. And you think, she could have done that to him when she was on the phone to Prendergast in the first place. But there was a lot of themes like that where growing a pair, like he's had these thoughts and he's finally acted on him. Prendergast has got had these thoughts and he was doing it for his wife, and now he's had enough of her, and now he's just, oh fuck it, I'm going to do what I want, and I'm staying in the police force. And there's a lot of these kind of things where, like, she's had enough and she leaves. She runs out of their house. I mean, stupidly to somewhere where he's going to find her. She's obviously damsel in distress 101. But there's a lot of things. I mean, I've only watched it once. I watched it this afternoon, and I'll get that from that straight away. There's a lot of things of don't let things bubble under anymore, and just do it.
Yeah, one thing that stood out for me, and I don't know if this is because this has become something de rigueur in modern day cinema, the role of the anti-hero in films. There are some anti-heroes that you see and they're admirable. Like you actually, like, they might do bad things, but for good reasons. And I was halfway through this film and I started to feel uneasy because I thought, if they try and present him as being the hero at the end of this, when he's doing all of these appalling acts, I was really struggling about halfway through. And then something just clicked and I thought, it's not, because this isn't him picking on specific individuals. This is him picking on caricatures.
Yeah.
This is very much, it's almost reading a comic book. Like the characters are so big and over the top. So I thought it did change my reading of the film. And the saving grace was definitely that line I mentioned about, am I the villain? Because he realises then he's the bad guy, not the anti-hero. He's just the villain.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, actually, because one comparison that I made when I was like studying this film and everything was that let's presume that everything is intentional in direction. You know, this is the same guy that's done 8mm. So let's presume that everything that he's done is intentionally. The fact that he pulls out a water pistol as his final weapon of choice is an emasculation. We've actually shown that he isn't the embodiment of a real man. He's firing blanks, if anything. Whereas Prendergast, who is now the man, he's the big bad boss who's calmly, you know, he's won the shootout, he's won the duel, he's got a bullet, he's got a real gun. And I just think that was a nice touch there to show that actually this guy isn't a hero as much as he believes what he's doing is justified. He's firing blanks essentially. And I just think all the character arcs that come to a head do it in a really nice organic way. And I think it was put really nicely together. That's not to say this film is without its flaws. I think the portrayal of women in the film is horrendous, to be honest, in that they're not sexualized so much as
the slaves.
Yeah, they're either pathetic, needy, psychopathic bunny boilers, or they're not equal to men in their roles. So you don't have a man like the woman in the McDonald's ripoff. She's just a clerk who actually, for a split second, looks like she's attracted to Michael Douglas's character. Or you get the cop who's having to prove herself constantly all the time, and the fact that she's Hispanic as well. Throw that in there as well, just to downgrade her that little bit more, because that's essentially what it is. There's the mom or the ex-wife as well. She's constantly reliant on the police, and especially the male police as well. So I think that females are really badly portrayed in this film, but I don't know if that's because they're pushing this masculinity thing much.
Sorry, Matt. The only character who was sexualized was Prendergast's wife, and she was sexualized because she's no longer attractive.
Yeah.
And that's why she's gone a little bit loopy, because she's not an attractive woman anymore because she's middle-aged. What a fucking appalling comment to put out there. Really poor. So yeah, that's far and away the worst thing about the film, is definitely the portrayal of women in it. It doesn't look good at all, to be honest.
And then you go from women to the gay couple. I mean, you couldn't get more stereotypical than one guy looking relatively normal next to his partner who's wearing a black vest and all oiled up in a gun shop. You think it is like a film version of GTA, but it's not a parody.
And Andy's absolutely right. It's caricatures of people, isn't it? It's just the extreme ends of
Yeah.
of different like groups and ethnicities and races and things like that. But I really I really enjoyed it. I'm glad you guys watched it and had a chance to kind of go over it and do something a little different, because rightly or wrongly, I don't think there's many of the Nick Cage films that we've watched that have actually had too much in terms of depth, in terms of like putting society under the microscope kind of thing. I mean, I suppose Left Behind did in a way about how like crazy crazy people are who have religion. Was there any kind of takeaways from the film that, like, if you were to recommend it to somebody, what would be like your elevator pitch for it if you were going to try and sell it to someone to watch?
I would use what you said about it's GTA. It's like San Andreas the film. It's set in the early 90s. It's about a white guy who goes mad and levels up, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And goes crazy. There's quite ridiculous scenes. There's a bit of heart in it as well. You got massively over the top characters like the redneck. And actually, we can link this because there was a Santa cutout in the gun shop, but he did have a Nazi symbol on his arm, so it's kind of not the same. There's your Christmas link anyway. But that's what you'd recommend. Just go and watch it, because it's. I mean, how do you even categorize it? What is it? It's like action thriller, maybe, I suppose, in a way.
Thriller, yeah, I suppose.
I think if I was going to sell it to you, I would have two separate ones. I would have one to sell it to Stu, and I'd have one to sell it to you, Matt. If it to Stu, I would just go with completely. I would liken it to something like Crank, because without the outright comedic elements, it's similar to Crank. It's one man on a mission. He's the bad guy, really, but he justifies his own actions, and it's sort of like it's basically either a comic book or a computer game. If I was going to sell it to you, though, Matt, I would tell you that it's a microcosm of America, that actually it's got some socio-political messages that delve deeper into some of these ideologies that it's coming up with.
Very
so
nice.
I think, as you said before we started recording, this is something that you can go as deep or as shallow into this movie as you want.
Mm-hmm.
There's something there, like wherever you are on that spectrum.
And it's funny because...
I don't mean that's an insult at all, Stu. I just know that you like crazy over the top stuff.
A film like, in terms of this film's influence, like I hadn't even put two and two together when you said that falling down moment. Like I hadn't put two and two together in that, but you're absolutely right, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But like, as I mentioned before, there's a comedy film that like takes off the pier scene in Alan Partridge's Alpha Papa. And it's not like scene for scene or anything, but it's massively influenced, if not plagiarized, by this end scene, because of the man who is just tipped over the edge by the company that he works for, trying to usher him out into a new era. And I'm talking about Alpha Papa now, not Falling Down. And I just love that film has not so quietly taken elements from this film, and I think it's just a nice like closing touch for me that this film still has like cultural references like to this day.
And of course, the other massive touchstone, it was referenced in The Simpsons. So there's the episode Homer's Enemy with Frank Grimes, who kills himself.
Grimesy,
even had the square head and everything like it.
Oh my God,
and I think that's how you know you've made it as a cultural touchstone, is it gets referenced in The Simpsons.
Did you think that it was a bit Terminator-like as well in parts, where how it was shot, like he was this unstoppable force, and that you had the kind of like the late 80s synth music soundtrack at parts in the background as well?
Yeah,
I thought
that's what we needed. Just the
Yeah,
but I'm really glad we sat down and watched this, because it's something that I'd always thought about getting to one day, and I'd probably have never got round to it unless we was going to do it for something like this. So I'm really glad that you told us to watch it, Matt.
Yeah,
really
no, thanks. I mean, going forward as well with these UnCaged episodes, it really is kind of uncaged, unbarred, unplanned. Like there isn't like no rules really in terms of like we're going to watch things that aren't necessarily related to Nick Cage and in any capacity. Like this does actually have a direct link in terms of Joel Schumacher and a director link. But if you guys are listening to this, is anything that you'd like us to cover as well, let us know on Twitter or in an email, and I'm sure we'll get round to it and put our spin on things. But no, thank you guys for listening. Really, really appreciate it.
Yep, super. Thank you very much. So, like I say, just enjoy the rest of your Christmas time, and we'll see you in the new year. So, Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Take it easy, guys. Stay safe.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, just remember, you leave the skin on the chicken.
It's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.